Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to do a basic magic system inside of Godot. Now, it's not going to be a super crazy one. What we're going to do is we're going to set up our magic system to go off of our dash. So every time we dash, it's going to reduce our magic points, right? Our magic values by a set value. So in our case, it's going to be 10. And then we're also going to set up the ability to have our mana regenerate. And we are going to do a little bit of refactoring of some of our code in preparation of kind of making this to more of a production level game. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping on our player controller. So we're going to do some changes to how the dash system works a little bit to help make it a little bit better and easier for us to maintain and a little bit more efficient than how it was before. So what we're going to do is we are going to go out to our player controller. So let's go ahead and open that up. Let me resize this for you guys. All right. And we're going to come down to our movement code here, process movement. We're going to add in a bit of code here. So the first thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to take my facing direction and I'm going to change that into a vector 2. So let's go up to where that is, change this to a vector 2. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, that's going to be equal to a new vector 2, and we're going to say 0, 0. That way, just by default, it's created. And now we need to come in here and make this into a new vector 2 and put in our 2 commas here, or 2 zeros here. And then we need to go ahead and go out to our facing direction and change that to .x. And then let's take this and change it to a .x as well. So we're going to scroll down and we are going to take a look at some of our dashing code here. Now you can see that we're kind of, hey, if UI left, UI right, UI up, UI right and up, UI left and up, and then we're doing our stuff here. And that's really inefficient and really poor code design on my part. I really shouldn't have this like this, right? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So instead, let's go ahead and map our inputs much like we do up here, right? Let's match our inputs up and bring some of this process dash code, actually all of it really, into our process movement code. That way we can kind of condense our code and make things a little bit more efficient and a little nicer. So we already have UI left and UI right, right? So what if we just wanted to add UI up and UI down, right? Because we have UI, well, I guess technically we don't need to really process UI down because I don't know if you would ever dash down. So I guess we could just do UI up. So if we actually just take UI up and just copy that and bring that up here and paste it. And now we're saying, hey, if you hit left, right, or up, then we're going to change our facing direction. But we can't get away with saying facing direction is equal to -1 and facing direction equals to +1, because now we're taking this and moving it into more of a 3-dimensional, or I guess in this case, a 2-dimensional object, right? So instead of us saying, hey, the person is going up, left, or right, they're going left, right, or up, or they're going left or up, or they're going up or right, right? So we need to, instead of doing a integer, right, we need to do a vector 2 because we need to be able to handle y-axis changes and x-axis changes, if that makes sense. So, and it'll make a lot more sense as we go. But the first thing we need to do is we need to change our facing direction to a vector 2. So if we scroll all the way up to the top and we say private vector 2, facing direction is equal to new vector 2, and we say 0, 0, and we'll just go ahead and copy this because we're going to need to do that down here as well. So we'll scroll down to the bottom here, down to our movement code, and paste in that new vector 2. And since UI left is on our x-axis, let's go ahead and just go .x. And then because UI right is on our x-axis, we'll say .x as well. And now we can come in here and delete this little bit here, and we can say facing direction .y is equal to 1. Because we're going up, right? And then we can also, we don't have to worry about our animated sprite because we're not going to flip our sprite if we're going up, right? There's no sprite for up. So we're good there. Now we need to say, hey, if our facing direction does not equal 0, right? We can't do that anymore. We need to say .x, right? Because we want to say, hey, if our facing direction .x is equal to 0. So if our character is moving on our x-axis, we then need to play our animation and we need to face a specific direction and move our character. So now we can say velocity.x math lerp, right? Velocity.x facing direction.x times speed. Awesome. So now that we have that, now we have a basic way to move left and right by using a vector 2 here instead of using our integer. So we got all that at least working. Now we need to go ahead and bring in our dash code, right? Like we did before. So what we can do is if we look at our dash code, you can see that we're adding in our dash speed. So if we come up here, instead of doing how we were saying, hey, check for all of these cool variables, and if they hit shift, go ahead and apply them, right? That's how we were doing it before. Well, instead, what we could do is we can go ahead and say if input dot is action just pressed quote dash, and then we can come up here and say if is dash available, then I want to say is dashing is equal to true because we are actually starting our dash, right? Now we're allowing our character to dash. And then we're going to say dash timer is equal to dash timer, dash timer reset. Come on. Dash timer reset is dash available is equal to false. And then we should be good for now. Awesome. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and come down here and say, or facing direction dot y does not equal 0. Then we can do some fun stuff here. So what we can say here is, hey, if I'm dashing, right, then velocity dot x is equal to my dash speed times my facing direction dot x, and then my velocity dot y is equal to my dash speed times my facing direction dot y. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to control how my velocity is going to change based off of my dashing. And then I'm going to say else do our normal movement like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to simplify our dash code a lot. So now if we go to our process dash here, we find our reference, which is right here, is dash available, and we comment this out. And now it's commented out of our code. We can go ahead and run this, and our dashing should work and be slightly more efficient, although we do have a compiler error. Oh, what does it say? Oh, facing direction dot x. I missed an x for when I take damage. Okay, let's try that again. So let's go ahead and play. Cool. So now if I dash, you'll see that I can dash left and right. Oh. And it seems to be working, at least somewhat, right? But you'll notice that dashing up dashes down, which isn't correct, and dashing down doesn't dash up. So that's strange. So why is that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the code and let's find out. So if we scroll up, let's go ahead and take a look at some of our code here. Now we're no longer using process dash, so it's always good to delete code that's not being used anymore. So this code is useless to us, so let's go ahead and get rid of it. Cleaning up our code base a little bit. If we keep scrolling up, you'll see here there is dashing, and then we're running through our normal stuff, and then we're saying, hey, if dash time, right, velocity is 0, so we stop our velocity. And then we're saying, hey, else if is climbing, add some gravity. Gravity is usually what's pulling us down. So let's see what happens if we do else is climbing and is not dashing. And we had that issue where our movement was flipped. So let's go ahead and do -1 instead for Y up or Y down, I guess, technically speaking. So let's go ahead and run that and let's see how that goes. So if I hit up and dash, you'll see that I can dash up now. If I land, I can dash to the left and I can dash to the right, and I can dash in the corner and dash in the corner. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now we can dash in three of the 4 directions. But I'd like to dash down. I don't know if I'd ever really need to dash down, but let's go ahead and add that in. It's only going to take us 2 seconds to add it in. So let's just go ahead and copy this, paste it, UI down, and then face direction 1. And we don't need to test that, right? I mean, it'll work, hopefully. So we'll keep it like that. So now that we put all that together, we've really narrowed down our code and made it more efficient. And you'll see as time goes on, I'm going to start refactoring this code, and we're going to start making it a more sophisticated and more optimized system as time goes on. So, you know, be sure to pay attention to all the tutorial videos, because I'm going to be doing this for a lot of the stuff as time goes on. We'll keep expanding on this project and make it into something truly special. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and add in some magic. So what we need to do is we need to make it so that the person can only dash so much, right? And I'd like to eventually add in magic attacks and things like that in the future. So we need to add a magic system for the player to have, right? So the player needs to have like a mana amount, and like if they dash, it's going to reduce their mana amount, right? So let's go ahead and add some of that, and let's add in some mana regeneration if we want it. And I think that'll be what we'll do for this next little section. So let's scroll up to the top and add in our mana here. So we'll just say private float mana is equal to, and we'll say 100. I think that'll be a good number. And then we also need to describe what our maximum mana is. So private float max mana is equal to, and we're going to put it at 100F for right now. Oops, missed my semicolon. Oops, missed my semicolon again. All right, so now that we have these two things, let's scroll down and let's go ahead and set up our usage of our mana. So if we scroll down to our dashing section here, we can go ahead and start removing some mana when the user uses it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, if dash is available and mana is greater than whatever value we want to put as our minimum amount of mana to dash. Now, in this case, I'm going to say it's going to take 10 mana to dash. Now, I'm probably going to pull this out here into some kind of variable or object or something later, but right now we'll focus on just getting it to work. So we'll say, hey, if mana is above 10, then we're good to go. And now what we need to do is we need to say mana is minus equals the 10 that dashing costs. And now if we print, now if we go ahead and we print our mana when we do our dashing, you'll see that when we dash, you'll see that now we have 90 right here. So if we dash again, we have 80, we have 70. Oh, I got shot. I wasn't paying attention. I was reading the stuff. 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. And then if we dash, you'll notice that we can't dash because we're too low on mana, which is a bug. If you've noticed that we have 10 mana, we should be able to dash, right? We're above the, or we are at the required amount. So we know that this works, but we also know that we need to adjust some of our code. So let's go ahead and go back into Visual Studio here. And let's say mana is greater than or equal to 10. It can go ahead and do the dash. And now that we know that our mana can drop down below 10, let's go ahead and set up a mana regeneration system. So if the user's been sitting for a little bit of time or something, or kind of like with, like if you think of Halo or something like that, when your shields get low, it kind of stays there for a second, then kind of refills. That's kind of what I'd like to do. So let's go ahead and build that real quick as well. So if we scroll up to our velocity section here, so hey, if we're not climbing or dashing, right? Else, you know, if we're not doing any of this stuff, right? We can come down here and we can say, if mana is less than 100, I want it to attempt to fill up my mana. So I'll say mana plus equals delta times 1. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me, and I know that it's times 1, and you're going, why are you timesing it by 1? It's just going to be delta. That's because in the future, I'm going to make this a variable, so that way we can actually increase the amount of mana the player can regenerate in a period of time if we want to. So a lot of these values here are going to be switched out, but we're just building in the base code here. So then I'm going to say gd.print mana. So now that we've saved this, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So right now our mana is 100, so we're not regenerating any mana. If we teleport, all right, now we're regenerating mana. See that? Sweet. So that means that we could dash, land, dash, 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 dash. You can see how it'll slowly but surely refill for the user, which is really cool. But what if we want to do a pause? You see how it's immediate refilling. It's not waiting for the player. It's just refilling immediately. So how would we go about refilling it and having it wait? Well, what we can do is we can create what's called a stamina timer, right? A timer that's a set timer to wait until it starts doing its refilling. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to create some of our global variables here for this timer. So we're going to scroll up to the top and we're going to say private float mana timer reset, because we need to have a timer reset, much like we did in a previous video. We did like our climb timer and climb timer reset. It's basically the same thing, just slightly different. So we'll say mana timer reset, let's say 2 seconds. I think 2 seconds is a good time. And then we're going to say private float mana timer is equal to F. So the initial dash will be a 2 second delay before it starts building up some mana here. And then we need to come down to our movement code. We can come down to here and we can say mana timer is equal to mana timer reset, and that's going to allow us to reset our timer. So that way, when the user dashes, we don't suddenly allow them to recharge immediately. We are resetting it every time they dash. So you can dash, but because you dashed and used your magic, it requires you to reset your mana. So to me, that makes it a little bit more risk reward. You can either try to get out of the fight, or you can and not get your mana back, or you could try to stay into the fight, let's say, and potentially regain some mana. So now we need to scroll up to our mana section here. So if mana is less than 100, we need to set up, if it's less than 100, we're going to fill it up, but we need to also make sure that our mana timer has elapsed, right? So that way the mana timer has actually finished its time frame. So we'll say and mana timer is less than or equal to 0. And then we need to say, hey, if it's not less than or equal to 0, we need to start running that timer, right? We need to start running that timer to get it to 0 as quickly as possible, right? Because we want them to get their mana back. So we need to say, else if mana does not equal 100, then I need you to go ahead and make your mana timer be reduced by delta time. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, hey, let's reduce the mana timer by delta, which means it's reducing by seconds. Now, we could actually add in, if we did times, let's say 1 or whatever value we wanted, we could put in a 2 if we wanted it to be reduced in half, right? If we want it to come back faster. So say they picked up a power up or something, right? We could make that a variable and allow them to override that value, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, I'm going to keep it like this for now, and we'll get into that when we get into power-ups and features and things like that later in the tutorial series, right? But from here, we should have everything we need for our mana timer to work. So if we open up our Godot and then go ahead and dash, you'll see it says 90. And now 2 seconds have elapsed and I'm starting to gain mana again. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Simple enough. Now, we do have some code that is being reused in here. So we really should refactor some of this code. So if we go take a look at it, we have mana plus equals delta 1. And then we also have mana minus equals 10. And we're not doing any error checking, right? So the player in theory could reduce it below 10 or above 100 in theory. And we don't want that, right? We want the ability to control that. So let's create a function to update our mana and just call that instead, because it makes things a little easier when it's out in a function. So we'll come over here and say public void, and I'm going to make it public. And the reason why I'm making it public is so that the game manager or anything really can touch that specific function and update the player's stamina at any time. It allows us a lot of flexibility there, so that way we can mess around with that kind of stuff. So we'll say update mana, and then we're going to pass in a float, and we will say mana amount, and then we're going to say mana plus equals mana amount, and then we're going to say, hey, if mana is greater than or equal to max mana, then I want mana equal to max mana. Else, if mana is less than or equal to 0, then I want mana equal to 0. And what that's going to do is that's going to force it between the two values that we have. You can either have your total mana amount or you can have 0. That way you can't be outside of those bounds. It kind of forces us into those two little bounds there. And I'm going to go ahead and copy update mana. I'm going to scroll up to where I do my dash. And instead of doing mana minus equals 10, I'm going to say update mana 10. And then I'm going to scroll up and I am going to find where my mana is getting added right here. So I'll paste that in. And then we'll say plus equals our delta plus 1. There we go. And it should work exactly the same. So now if we go back into our game here and we run our project, we dash, you can see it's waiting. Oh, we're getting 100 mana. Uh-oh, I made a mistake somewhere. Let's take a look. My guess is I flipped it, didn't I? Oh, that's what I forgot. Update mana minus 10, not 10, because that's going to give you plus 10. So now let's go ahead and try doing that again, and it should work. All right, now we're at 90. Sweet. Very cool. So you'll notice that there is one bug that we need to look at is if I hit up, you'll see that the character is running, which is a problem because the character is not actually running, right? He's just sitting in place. So we need to fix that. So let's go ahead and close that and take a look at our player controller here. If we come down here and we go ahead and check out our hey, if not in air, let's say if not in air and facing direction.x does not equal 0. And that will force the player to not play its animation unless it's moving either left or right. So now if we do that, that'll fix that little issue. So if we hit up, you'll see that it doesn't do anything. If we hit left and right, the character runs. Sweet. All right. So what did we do today? Well, we created a small mana system. We did some refactoring of some code, and we made it so that our mana would regenerate after a delayed amount of time. So in the next video in this series, we're going to go through making a potion so that way the user can walk over to it and hit the X key or the enter key or whichever key and allow them to pick that up and restore their mana by 20 points. So that way we can have kind of like a pick-upable object. So that's what's going to be going on in the next video. Hopefully I'll have that one released like on Friday or maybe that following Monday. So it should be pretty quick. But that's all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, you know, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. And as always, this was a viewer suggested video. So if you guys have any suggestions or anything you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below and I'd be more than happy to get to it. This little C# platformer series is going to be ongoing. So if there's any cool features you think would be awesome to see, let me know and I'll be more than happy to run through and build them. And hey, if you have any questions about any of this, let me know in the comments below or hit me up on my Discord. Link is in the description. We got some really cool guys out there and, you know, they always love talking to people. But that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching and I will see you all next time. Thanks.